Good morning, everyone. I'm Martha Tedeschi, Director of the Harvard Art Museums, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you today to the Symposium Bauhaus 100, Object Lessons from a Historic Collection. Thank you for joining us. Over the course of the day, we will hear from 7 scholars who will present new research on objects in or closely tied to the Busch-Reisingers and Harvard's extensive Bauhaus collections. The symposium is presented in conjunction with a special exhibition, The Bauhaus and Harvard, on view in the third floor galleries through July 28th. If you have some free time during your lunch break, I encourage you to see the exhibition. It includes a number of the objects you'll be hearing about today. The 100th anniversary of the founding of the Bauhaus in Weimar, Germany, has sparked excitement here at the museums and across campus, as well as internationally. Just last night, we hosted the 3rd installment of the 5-part film series, Film by Design, Bauhaus and the Moving Image, curated by VES faculty member Laura Fromm, which is being presented here and at the Harvard Film Archive next door in the Carpenter Center. If you are hoping to see more, and we hope that we will be leaving you hungry for more today, we encourage you to visit the Harvard Law School, the Houghton Library, the MIT Museum, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston for their Bauhaus-related exhibitions. We truly have a Bauhaus festival going on in Boston and Cambridge at the moment. Additionally, the Graduate School of Design will present a Bauhaus-inspired event on April 24th, and you can find more about that on our website for all of these related events. So the website for the Harvard Art Museum will fill you in on everything that's happening. Numerous courses on the Bauhaus are also being taught here at Harvard in the History of Art and Architecture department, in the Graduate School of Design, and in the Department of Visual and Environmental Studies. And I'm delighted to see some of our faculty colleagues here today. At the moment, my job is to thank our generous donors, to acknowledge those who support our programs. And specifically today, support for this symposium, which is provided by the M. Victor Leventritt Fund, which was established through the generosity of his wife, friends, and children. M. Victor Leventritt was a member of the class of 1935, and the purpose of this fund is to present outstanding scholars of the history and theory of art to the Harvard and Greater Boston communities. Support for the Bauhaus exhibition is provided by endowed funds, including the Daimler Curatorship of the Busch-Reisinger Museum, the Charles L. Kuhn Endowment Fund, and the Care of the Busch-Reisinger Museum Collection Fund. Modern and contemporary art programs at the Harvard Art Museums are made possible, in part, by generous support from the Emily Rao Pulitzer and Joseph Pulitzer Jr. Fund for Modern and Contemporary Art. And now, I'm pleased to kick things off by inviting to the podium my colleague Laura Muir, who is research curator in our Division of Academic and Public Programs. Laura is the curator of the Bauhaus and Harvard exhibition and organizer of today's symposium. Enjoy the day. Laura, please join me.
Thank you so much, Martha, and thank you to everyone here for joining us today. This year, as I think everyone in the room is aware, marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Bauhaus, the 20th century's most influential school of art, architecture, and design. Established by architect Walter Gropius in Weimar, Germany in 1919, it sought to create art, design objects, and environments that would revolutionize everyday life. Following its closure in 1933, Harvard became a center for Bauhaus, the Bauhaus in America, when Gropius joined the university's Department of Architecture in 1937. After World War II, with the aid of Gropius, the Busch-Reisinger Museum established a Bauhaus collection, which is today the largest of its kind outside Germany. And on the screen, you see a view of an early installation at the Busch-Reisinger Museum. The exhibition on view on the third floor is the first major exhibition of that historic collection in nearly 50 years. It presents almost 200 objects by over 70 artists and explores the school's activities in Germany as well as its influence in the United States. And this transatlantic span is reflected in today's papers. 4 address topics concerning the Bauhaus in Germany, and 3 consider its influence and afterlife through its pedagogy and the work of many of its artists in this country. The collection grew out of a remarkable collaborative initiative between the museum and former Bauhaus artists and their families to preserve the legacy of this school. As Busch-Reisinger Museum curator Charles Kuhn wrote in his 1947-48 annual report, one of the most important projects planned for the future is the assembly of study material related to the Bauhaus. This school of design has had an enormous influence on American architecture and industrial design, and the presence at Harvard of a study collection will be of great service to future historians of architecture and of art. And for nearly 70 years, the study collection has been a key resource to Bauhaus scholars worldwide and continues to spark new research. 11 years ago, almost to the day, on March 15, 2008, the Busch-Reisinger Museum hosted another symposium, Bauhaus Palimpsest, the Object of Discourse. It was organized by Jeffrey Seletnik and Robin Schuldenfrei, both of whom I'm delighted to say are presenting at today's symposium, which signals our ongoing commitment to Bauhaus scholarship and engagement with the objects in the collection. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to thank a few people. I am deeply grateful to former and current fellows and graduate interns for the contributions they have made during the course of this multi-year project through their research on the collection and work in developing the exhibition and its related programming. So thank you to Rob Wiesenberger, Melissa Venator, Raphael Koenig, Cameron Manny, and Charlotte Leib. And I'm so glad that most of them are here today, and I very much look forward to Rob's and Melissa's papers. And it is thanks to the incredible organization and coordination of Bridget Hens, the project's fantastic curatorial assistant, that this symposium has been realized. And I'm grateful to Michael Dumas for coordinating complicated travel arrangements for 7 speakers, and to Molly Ryan, the museum's fabulous programs manager, for everything you do all the time. Thank you to Busch-Reisinger Museum curator Lynette Roth for your ongoing support and enthusiasm for this project, and for serving as a respondent for this morning's session. And finally, thank you to our speakers for being here with us today to share your research and insights. So this morning, we will hear 4 papers with a short break between the second and third. Afterwards, there will be a response and time for questions. So we ask that you please hold your questions until that time. And please silence your cell phones. Since detailed biographies appear in your programs, in the interest of time, I will keep my introductions brief with just a few updates. Our first speaker is Melissa Venator, the 2016-2019 Stefan Engelhorn Curatorial Fellow in the Busch-Reisinger Museum, and over the past 2.5 years, my brilliant partner in developing the Bauhaus exhibition. She was particularly instrumental in conceptualizing the presentation related to pedagogy at the Bauhaus and the work of Ludwig Hirschfeld Mack, which we will now hear more about in her paper, Color Wheels and the Bauhaus Science of Design. Please help me welcome Melissa Venator.
That was another slide. My fault.
No, it's no problem.
I'll just advance it.
Good morning. I have the special privilege and honor of speaking first, but only because my material is chronologically the earliest, from 1922. So we're being transported, well, in a moment, we'll be transported back to near the beginning of the Bauhaus. But my paper today began with this photograph, which is not from 1922. It shows 3 circular color studies installed in the first gallery of MoMA's landmark 1938 Bauhaus exhibition. Oh, I have a better one there. All 3 of these color studies belong to a group of 40 contrast and color studies made by Ludwig Hirschfeld Mack in 1922 at the Bauhaus in Weimar. 22 of the studies are now here in the Busch-Reisinger's Bauhaus collection, including 2 of the studies in this photograph. I lost my mouse. Let's see if this works. So this one on the far left and this one on the far right, can you see? Yeah, okay, are in our collection. Herbert Bayer, a second installation photograph of the same gallery shows 8 more studies from the same group installed in a section titled Color Experiments 1922-23. And I have a detail so you can see it a little better. And just to orient you, the color studies are here. You see the leftmost and rightmost one. Herbert Bayer, the exhibition curator and designer, reproduced 2 of the grayscale grayscale exercises in the exhibition catalog for this exhibition, with the caption reading, "Experiments in the qualities of black and white when mixed with colors. Colors mixed with black tend to recede, colors mixed with white tend to advance." These works epitomize what make Hirschfeld Mack's contrast and color studies so special. They are elegant and complex compositions that also illustrate fundamental principles of color perception. The work on the left shows how 2 diamond-shaped grayscales appear on the left. So this one. To tip out into our space, or on the right, to tip back into the pictorial space, according to the order in which the diamonds are superimposed. The work on the right demonstrates how color is affected by its neighbors. The same gray appears lighter on the black background, so I recommend something like this row. The same gray appears lighter on the black background than it does on the white background. Bayer probably chose these 2 studies in 1938, both for the exhibition and to reproduce in the catalog, for the same reason Laura Muir chose them for the exhibition upstairs, because they demonstrate the basic laws of design that characterize teaching at the Bauhaus, but they're also beautiful works of art. Which brings us back to this photograph. To my modern eye, the circular studies, and especially the 2 color wheels on the left that Bayer chose, are among the kind of least interesting of Hirschfeld Mack's studies. They lack the elegance, complexity, and experimental quality that first attracted me to his art. Yet Bayer not only chose them from among 40 others, he also installed them in a symbolic place in the gallery. They hang in a break in the wall over a table of preliminary course exercises made at the new Bauhaus in Chicago, and you can see them beneath. The visitor looks through these studies into a second gallery beyond of products designed at the Bauhaus, and it's kind of back there, but you can see there. Bayer's installation positions the exercises, the color wheel, and the paper sculptures as the educational foundations on which these designs are built. He singles out the 6-part color wheel at left for special attention with a label that reads, Color Experiments Investigation, led by Ludwig Hirschfeld Mack into the quality of color, the relations between colors, and the relations between color and form. But honestly, I struggle to see Bayer's ambitious claim in the color wheel's prosaic form, and my disconnect suggests that the color wheel had a symbolic importance at the Bauhaus that modern viewers like me have forgotten. So I began my investigation into this lost history of the Bauhaus color wheel with Ludwig Hirschfeld Mack's 6-part color wheel. The first mystery then being its function. It's titled Color Wheel Exercise, but it and the other contrast and color studies in this group are unlike any other student exercises made at the Bauhaus in Weimar, and nor do they relate to Hirschfeld Mack's training as an apprentice in the printing workshop, which is what he was doing in 1922. Letters from Hirschfeld Mack, and I know these are German, but I also know there are some German speakers in the audience, but I'll explain what they say. Letters from Hirschfeld Mack to Bayer in MoMA's exhibition archive explain the original purpose of the color studies. Bayer wrote to Hirschfeld Mack in late 1937 to ask if he had any works from his Bauhaus years that he might be able to lend on short notice. Responding from England, which is what you see here, Hirschfeld Mack describes a portfolio of teaching charts, or Lehrtabellen, that you see underlined, on contrast and color theory that he had made at the Bauhaus in Weimar and brought with him to England to use in classroom instruction. And then we see that Bayer's preliminary handwritten, this is the typewritten preliminary checklist, includes an entry for 40 teaching charts on color and design theory from the time very damaged. They are very damaged. In his letters, Hirschfeld Mack explained that he had made the teaching charts, including the color wheels, for a color seminar held at the Bauhaus in the winter semester of 1922-23. It was the only dedicated color seminar ever taught at the Bauhaus, and it came about after the students petitioned the faculty council to offer a color course taught by Johannes Sitten. That's what they wanted. The council approved the students' request, but it did not teach the resulting color seminar, likely due to ongoing disputes with Gropius that led to Itten's resignation in 1923. And Hirschfeld Mack was then the next best candidate, a senior apprentice in the printing workshop. He had studied color theory with Itten's former teacher, Adolf Hölzel, in Stuttgart before arriving at the Bauhaus in 1919. Hirschfeld Mack later described the color seminar as, quote, a very interesting seminar led by Paul Klee and Vasily Kandinsky and others, in which participants sought to discover the reactions of individuals to certain proportions, linear and color compositions. Large charts were prepared, and masters and students stood round in a circle, looking at the charts, which were placed on the floor. They each made independent investigations of color qualities, and a most stimulating discussion followed. He describes the seminar as both an egalitarian and collective experience, in which everyone pursued their own experiments independently and then discussed their results as a group. The 40 works that we now know as contrast and color studies, and that Hirschfeld Mack called teaching charts, or Lehrtabellen, are the same large charts that he used in the seminar as visual aids. So before the 1922 color seminar, students at the Bauhaus first learned color theory in Johannes Itten's preliminary course. But Itten's Bauhaus color curriculum is impossible to reconstruct because he left no lecture notes, or rather, many of you know, he left lecture notes, but they dated from post-Bauhaus years. So we can't really be sure that they reflect his Bauhaus teaching. And his students left no class notes or exercises relating to color theory. Paul Klee integrated color into his lectures, and Vasily Kandinsky did as well, starting in 1923. But as a result, color study at the Bauhaus before the color seminar was largely supplemental and relatively limited in scope. It came up in the context of other classes. Yeah. When the students petitioned the faculty council for a color seminar in October 1922, they were perhaps thinking of the 1919 Bauhaus Manifesto, which you see here, but also of the 1921 Bauhaus statutes, both of which list the physics and chemistry of color, which you could also read as the physical and chemical color theory, based on the direct observation of teaching charts. Oh wait, I skipped. Sorry, let me back up. Both of which list the physics and chemistry of color as subjects of study. In these documents, like this 1919 manifesto, color theory is framed as a scientific rather than an artistic or aesthetic subject, as it was treated by Itten, Klee, and Kandinsky. Hirschfeld Mack's description of the color seminar and its students' independent investigations of color qualities based on the direct observation of teaching charts that tested color perception were much closer in spirit to the scientific aspirations of the curriculum. This new scientifically minded approach to color study coincided with a school-wide re-examination of the balance between theoretical and practical instruction. In December 1921, Gropius began negotiations to revise the 1921 statutes to increase the number and quality of designs coming out of the school's workshops. This, he insisted, had been the Bauhaus's goal all along. It meant not only reducing the number of hours students spent in theoretical coursework, classes like the preliminary course and Klee's lectures, but also rewriting the curriculum in those classes to better prepare students for the workshops. This internal sea change precipitated Itten's resignation, the eventual marginalization of the Bauhaus painters, and Gropius's announcement in 1923 of the Bauhaus's new slogan, Art and Technology, a New Unity. This is a poster by Bayer up in the exhibition, and it's one of the earliest kind of occurrences in which we see this slogan up here, Art and Technology, a New Unity. Inside the Bauhaus, however, and what I've kind of tried to explain, this rhetoric of technology had less to do with technology as such than with reasserting successful designs as the school's ultimate goal. And in this context, the 1922 Color Seminar was part of a larger initiative to redefine theoretical instruction at the Bauhaus along these productivist lines. The Color Seminar's scientific approach came to the fore in the summer of 1923 at the first Bauhaus exhibition, for which that poster was designed, and we see one of the entrances to the exhibition here, which the school reluctantly organized at the request of the state of Thuringia to demonstrate its achievements. In fact, there were votes of the faculty at the time, and they voted against wanting to do an exhibition because they just didn't think it was a good use of time or resources. They were more or less forced to do it. Hirschfeld-Mack described to Bayer, again in 1937, so moving back to the MoMA exhibition, how his teaching charts, quote, filled an entire room at this exhibition. The Color Seminar room was one of several in the exhibition dedicated to the theoretical instruction at the Bauhaus. Sadly, no photograph or written description of the Color Seminar room survives, but in addition to Hirschfeld-Mack's grayscale and color wheel charts we've already seen, we know that he also made a specific set of charts just for the exhibition. In April 1923, he wrote to the exhibition committee that he was, quote, finishing the instructional material, in parentheses, color experiments relating to Kandinsky's lectures. I skipped ahead. Okay. Years later, writing to Bayer, Hirschfeld-Mack differentiated between the charts that were his independent work, namely the ones that he made for this 1922 Color Seminar, and and you see it here in this detail, the triangle, square, circle equals yellow, red, blue charts that were the only ones from Kandinsky's seminar. These charts illustrating Kandinsky's theory of form-color correspondence are also now at the Busch-Reisinger. This is how Kandinsky's theory was illustrated in the 1923 Bauhaus exhibition. Kandinsky argued that the primary colors correspond to basic geometric shapes, seen here, a yellow triangle, a red square, a blue circle. He first published this theory in 1911's On the Spiritual in Art. This is a very kind of old story, right? Explaining, and this is the quote from On the Spiritual in Art, the value of many colors is reinforced by certain forms and weakened by others. Sharp colors have a stronger sound in sharp forms, such as yellow in a triangle. The effect of deeper colors is emphasized by rounded forms, such as blue in a circle. Now, in Kandinsky's charts, in his charts and Hirschfeld-Mack's charts that Kandinsky made, let me try this again. In Hirschfeld-Mack's charts of Kandinsky's theory that you see here, Hirschfeld-Mack repeats the correct combination along with two incorrect combinations. So you see at the top the yellow triangle, the red square, the blue circle, and then two other combinations beneath, giving exhibition visitors a chance to test the theory for themselves. But he took the experiment one step further by repeating the three combinations on three different grounds, white, gray, and black. And as you can see, we're missing the very last one, so I've recreated it. This is how we could imagine it might work in my sad PowerPoint skills. And as the ground darkens, so I originally wrote, as the ground darkens, the colors appear more vibrant. The more I look at this, some of the colors appear more vibrant. The yellow looks more vibrant. The blue looks a little bit deeper. So I think there's a complex set of color relations happening on these charts that I'm not really fully exploring in this paper. But in one of the many reviews of the 1923 exhibition, a critic called the theoretical section in particular, quote, evidence of the almost scientific serious-mindedness of the educational plan at the Bauhaus. This sentiment speaks directly to the 1922 Color Seminar's purpose to reform theoretical instruction at the Bauhaus along practical lines, and to Hirschfeld-Mack's teaching charts as vehicles of this message. And I haven't really explicitly stated it, but this comparison with Kandinsky, it's really an attempt on my part to demonstrate how Hirschfeld-Mack is intervening with Kandinsky's approach, is kind of turning what was a study of color affect really into the physiology of color and the perception of color. But what happened to our color wheels? This was supposed to be a talk about color wheels. Color wheels are not specifically mentioned in the literature of the 1923 exhibition, or at least Hirschfeld-Mack's color wheel color charts aren't. However, we can assume that they were exhibited along with all the other color charts, but there's no mention of them in the press. However, there is another color wheel planned for this exhibition, which provides us with some indication of the color wheel's life at the Bauhaus. Hirschfeld-Mack's color charts, we know, and as I've already said, were exhibited in the art school building, which the Bauhaus shared with Weimar's University of Fine Arts, an academy created in 1921 to provide traditional fine arts instruction. So basically, when the Bauhaus was formed, the traditional art academy merged, and suddenly students couldn't get that traditional art academy education, and in 1921, the art academy is established. And so the Bauhaus is kind of an unhappy bedfellow with this academy sharing the building. Gropius hoped to renovate the art school's shared vestibule, which we see here, designed by Henry van de Velde, an absolutely beautiful space. It's a modern photograph of it, obviously. So Gropius hoped to renovate this space, the art school's shared vestibule, with a sweeping design. In a letter to the Art Academy's Faculty Council, he proposed a visual display of the elementary principles and art forms the two institutes shared. These elementary principles included elementary colors, shown in a color wheel, and elementary shapes in 1, 2, and 3-dimensional displays. So just try to imagine this space transformed along these lines. Two interactive components demonstrated the interpenetration of these colors and forms: a glass prism, which visitors could use to refract light, and more importantly for us, a spinning color wheel to demonstrate the mixing of colors by superimposition, as Gropius writes. Gropius concluded that his pedagogically vivid design would make the vestibule an attraction for students and citizens and bridge the differences between Academy and Bauhaus by the interests we share. Not least, he wrote, it would demonstrate Goethe's ideas on the correlation of art and science. The Art Academy rejected Gropius's proposal, so we have to, again, just imagine how this spinning color wheel might have looked. Maybe something like this. This is a flywheel designed by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe around 1800 to study the optical mixture of color. Bauhaus artists would have been able to see this specific flywheel, or one very similar to it, and other color study devices designed by Goethe in his home laboratory in Weimar, which opened in 1885 as a public museum of Goethe's life and work. Best known as a leading writer and philosopher of the late 18th and early 19th, late 17th and early 18th century. No, wait, I'm sorry, I was right the first time, late 18th, around 1800, thank you. Goethe was also a scientist whose treatise, Color Theory, appeared in 1810. He is sometimes described as the first person to study the physiological perception of color, meaning the study of color as we see it and for its visual properties rather than its physical or chemical properties. Goethe used the flywheel here to mix colors with scientific accuracy. He made discs from stiff paper painted with watercolor, mounted them to a flywheel, and then spun it using a thread. So if you wrap a thread around the spindle and pull it, then it will spin the spindle quite quickly. The colors blend optically when the disc spins fast enough. Gropius's spinning color wheel that demonstrates the mixing of colors through superimposition would perform the same task, we assume. Goethe, of course, didn't invent his flywheel, but Gropius's specific reference to Goethe in this proposal and Goethe's prominence in Weimar would have immediately suggested the association for residents and visitors alike. Now, in addition to the spinning color wheel, remember, Gropius also describes a color wheel of elementary colors. This could equally be a description of Hirschfeld-Mack's color wheel charts that are on view just upstairs. Not upstairs here, upstairs in the Weimar Art Academy building. And since we finally met Goethe, I can disclose that this common or garden variety 6-part color wheel that we've been looking at is historically significant. You see it here in the upper left-hand corner. It was first published by Goethe and appeared as this illustration in Color Theory. So it's the first illustration in 1810's Color Theory text. And I have a better version of it there. When Hirschfeld, Mack, Gropius, and other Bauhaus artists saw this color wheel, specifically the 6-part color wheel, they recognized it not as a generic color wheel, but as Goethe's color wheel. And for Goethe, the color wheel has special meaning. This particular one did. By alternating the 3 primary colors, yellow, red, blue, he's using watercolor, so it looks a little more pastel. And then the 3 secondary colors that they produce, again, orange, purple, green. Goethe's color wheel positions by alternating the 3 primary colors and the 3 secondary colors, Goethe's color wheel positions complementary colors opposite each other. Now, according to Goethe's color theory, complementary colors were special. First, because a complementary color pair unites all 3 primary colors. So if you have red and green, red is red, and then green is made up of blue and yellow, and so that's the triad of the primary colors. But also because of the visual phenomenon of afterimages. An afterimage is an optical illusion that we've all experienced before. It happens when we look at a bright stimulus, like a camera flash, and then we see a dark spot after we look away. Afterimages always appear as the complementary color of the original stimulus. So the flash is bright white while the afterimage is black. A red stimulus produces a green afterimage, etc. Knowing this, Goethe wrote that complementary colors, quote, show that the eye especially demands completeness, and seek to eke out the color wheel in itself. So the color wheel in the eye, it's a lovely line. In other words, the eye seeks balance and creates it when it is missing, as in the afterimage. The 6-part color wheel unites all 3 complementary pairs, and so represents the most complete and harmonious expression of basic color perception. So to recap, the unrealized design for the art school vestibule proposes 2 related but distinct identities for the color wheel at the Bauhaus. First, as a diagram of color harmony, and second, as an instrument used in the scientific color laboratories to mix color. Hirschfeld-Mack's chart of Goethe's 6-part color wheel might have performed the first function in the 1922 color seminar, namely as a diagram the seminar participants could use to test Goethe's definition of color harmony. But in the same years Hirschfeld-Mack was working on his color charts, he was also exploring the color wheel's second identity. In 1924, he repurposed the scientific color wheel as a spinning toy top. It was one of relatively few Bauhaus designs for toys that went into production, and this is actually a photograph of the current modern edition, which you can buy yourself. I think it's about $50. It's not exactly like the original. There are some notable differences that I'll point out, but it's the best illustration of it, really. The plain wooden top had a long spindle that held colored paper discs and came with a set of 7 discs that reproduced experiments by color scientists to demonstrate particular visual phenomenon. In addition to several black and white discs, Hirschfeld-Mack in the original set included 4 different color wheels. A 3-part wheel of the primary colors, like was in the center of the MoMA 3 display that I started this with. But in addition, Goethe's 6-part color wheel and later 12-part variants designed by Arthur Schopenhauer and Wilhelm von Bezold, 2 other very prominent color philosophers who published color theory. The top was illustrated in the book New Works from the Bauhaus Workshops, published in 1925. We see Hirschfeld-Mack's top with the caption that identifies it as a color toy top or Farbkreisel, alongside a set of blocks designed by Alma Buscher. One of the tops includes a 3-part wheel of primary colors, but the other discs in the photograph are eccentric ellipses not included in the original set. But when we look at the original packaging for the spinning toy top, it shows other differences between the photograph and Hirschfeld-Mack's design that suggest its more scientific origins. So the first thing is that he doesn't call it a Farbkreisel, he calls it an optischer Farbenmischer, which means optical color mixer, which is still what, if you want to buy it, you still have to search optical color mixer. It's not called a color top. signaling its broader appeal as a home color device, not exclusively for use by children. Likewise, the 7 color tables that investigate brightness and recreate the color wheels of various scientists, which you see listed here. So these describe the color discs that are included in the package. And recreate the color wheels of various scientists seems out of place in a toy designed for the same young children who would also play with Alma Buscher's blocks, right? So despite its marketing as a toy, Hirschfeld-Mack's title and the choice of the color discs all suggest its origins in scientific color experiments like those of the 1922 color seminar. And this is just an example of how this is from actually an edition that was produced in 1961 in conjunction with the opening of the Bauhaus Archive in Darmstadt. So this was another modern edition. But you see that there's in this case, the Goethe color circle on one side, and on the other side, on the back, it describes the colors, it calls it the Goethe color wheel, and then it explains what you're supposed to see when you spin the top, namely a neutral gray. In fact, Hirschfeld-Mack probably first encountered the idea of adapting the toy top as an optical color mixer from the same color science texts where he first encountered the color wheels. In 1923, a year when Hirschfeld-Mack was deeply engaged with color science, Nobel Prize-winning chemist Wilhelm Ostwald published a colored text for a general audience titled Color Science, a handbook for advanced students in schools, colleges, and the various arts, crafts, and industries depending on the use of color. Which is great, you just don't get titles like that anymore. In it, Ostwald explains to his readers, and this is from the English edition, it was a very popular book. So in it, Ostwald explains to his readers how they can demonstrate the principles of color mixture in their own homes by means of a simple experiment. He writes, a circular disc is cut out of strong cardboard, and a thin rod, appointed lucifer match, for instance, is fixed in to form an axis. This forms a top, which may be set in rapid motion, imparted by twisting the rod between the thumb and the forefinger. He continues to describe how the home scientists can paint paper discs with opaque watercolor to demonstrate the principles of color mixture. Hirschfeld-Mack's toy top as optical color mixer is then yet another example of this attempt to repurpose color science within the Bauhaus. So in closing, I want to return to Hirschfeld-Mack's color wheel at the 1938 MoMA exhibition. As I explained at the start of the talk, it was installed in the first gallery of the exhibition, but these weren't the first color wheels that visitors would see. To the left of the gallery entrance, Bayer set the stage of the sort of pedagogy of the Bauhaus with this didactic display of his own design titled the Bauhaus Synthesis. At its center is a black silhouette of a hand in which small icons symbolize the practical training of the workshops. Bayer represents the wall painting workshop with a color wheel. Point it out, it's right there. Divided into 3 segments corresponding probably to the 3 primary colors of yellow, red, and blue. It is an appropriate choice. Students in the wall painting workshop used color wheels to mix colors and build color palettes, and Vasily Kandinsky, longtime director of the wall painting workshop, organized its activities around the study of color and its properties, so it makes sense symbolically. But differences between Bayer's and Hirschfeld-Mack Differences between Bayer's and Hirschfeld-Mack's color wheels underscore what is so unique and powerful about the teaching charts. In the Bauhaus Synthesis, Bayer uses the color wheel as an abstract symbol of the wall painting workshop and an equally abstract display symbolizing the aim of Bauhaus pedagogy, namely the integration of studio theory and workshop practice. It is an entertaining graphic. It is really exciting. I want someone to write a paper on the Bauhaus Synthesis. But the egg, hand, and cube offer no insight into Bauhaus teaching. Hirschfeld-Mack's teaching charts, I argue, do the opposite. They place the viewer in the role of the Bauhaus student, who examines them to learn, according to the label, the qualities of color, the relations between colors, and the relations between colors and form. In the 1961 letter to Hans Fingler, Hirschfeld-Mack described the 1922 color seminar as the only attempt in Weimar to bring together masters, apprentices, and students for collective research. In exhibition, his charts recreate that collective experience of the Bauhaus Color Seminar for the modern viewer. Thank you.